Thank you, Sharon, and good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to be asked to come here and talk about export. We, as a company, I don't know if I want to get actually, before I start with that, what I'd like to do is just get a more show of hands, please. We've already had one show of hands who's exhibiting at PG Live. Who already exports? Quite a few, actually, already. Yeah, that's very good. Okay, good. So a lot of, hopefully what we're going to be pitching at today will be relevant to most of us in the room here. Just to give you a little bit about ArtFile, we're based in Nottingham. We're established last century, 19 years ago now. It only seems like yesterday. And we have, there's 18 of us in the company. And it's always a lot of fun. No 2 days are the same, as I'm sure that's the same for everyone here. So that's the ArtFile anyway. Who we export to? We export to over 25 territories now, and this has been built up over a number of years. I'll come back to the very beginning in a minute. Our export sales account for 18% of our turnover, and so therefore it's a significant income stream for us as a business. Countries we export to, you would expect us to export to the English-speaking territories like the USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, those sort of places. We're covered in most of Europe now, and more interestingly, places like Brazil, Japan, Taiwan even, which is very good for us, we think. And we're also now negotiating an agreement with Russia as well. So it doesn't stop. Our cards are translated into several other languages now, including the obvious ones, French, German, and Spanish. And that allows us, obviously, to sell them in more territories, particularly the French ones, where we can sell them to French Canada, even though there's a slightly different language there as well. Don't you just love the French? And also Spanish, obviously. Spanish obviously helps us in South America now as well. So it all sounds very grand, and I can't take credit for any of this really, but it wasn't always like this, I can assure you. Our first exhibition was at Spring Fair back in 1997, and when we opened the show on Sunday morning, it was a very, very small stand. It was only a metre by a metre. I wasn't allowed on it for obvious reasons, and so I was sort of working from the corridor. And our very first order at the show, and therefore actually our very first company order, was an export order, and it came in from Dean Newman, who's still our distributor in Canada, and he came to see us, and he placed an order with us for £10,000, which was great. And this was by 10:30 in the morning on Sunday morning, so we thought, we've got this sorted. What a great industry to be involved in. So we were very excited about that. Obviously, it gives you enormous help and significance in terms of what they thought of our range, and we were very happy with the fact that someone not only from a different country but a different continent had decided they wanted to be involved in our business and support us to that degree. So once the adrenaline had subsided, we also realized, hang on a minute, so now we've just made an order for 20,000 cards. How's that going to come together? Because you see, we hadn't really figured any of that out. We had gone to the show with all good intentions and not really expecting to sell that sort of those number of cards. We, like so many people, had started from a small lock-up. We had this romantic vision of perhaps packing a few orders at the weekend and sending them to far-flung places like York or Brighton, or overseas, perhaps Edinburgh. And we certainly weren't prepared for sort of mass order taking and volume packing. We didn't even have a pallet, would you believe? So this is the rudimentaries of exporting from the very beginning. So we quickly realised that we needed to get our act together, and also the other factor that we had to consider was that it blew a hole in our stock holding. We didn't have that much stock. We were very cautious, as everyone else is, and we really had to think very quickly about how we were going to handle all of that. So this is where we are today, but that's the story of where we started from. So, take the decision, do you want to export? That sounds a pretty silly question, I understand. But we're all here, so that's a good start. Britain leads the way, the world really, in creative greeting card design. And that's absolutely true. Those of you who've been to the New York Stationery Show, it's a very exciting show to go to. A lot of the most exciting product there is actually British and comes from here. They're pretty good on the West Coast as well, and no doubt some of the ideas from the West Coast come over here as well. But thinking about exporting as a British company, you really should consider this, because it gives us a step up before we even start. We wanted to be an international brand, even though clearly we weren't geared up for that first exhibition. But when we started the company, and everyone has their own dreams and aspirations of what they want to achieve when they start their business, we felt very much that we wanted to be an international brand. Greeting cards is all about volume sales. So was it good for our business? Yes, it would be good for our business, is what we assumed. Trading with distributors or retailers in a territory. As someone mentioned in the previous session here, we actually also trade with both. So we have distributors in all these major territories that we spoke about. There are 4 or 5 territories, particularly the USA, where we deal directly with some retailers too. We kind of just deal with them as if they were a national account here in the UK. So certainly in the USA, in Canada, in Japan, and also in France. France actually is a great market. For 20 years, I would tell everyone that France, actually, they don't send cards. In France, and this is what I was taught, they send postcards but not greeting cards. Don't believe it. They love cards. So I'm going to come back and talk about distributors or retailers and how's the best way to find them and how's the best way to choose which ones to go with later on. So what impact did this decision have on our business once we decided that we were going to export? This is fundamental stuff, but at the end we're going to go through some questions that I took from some overseas distributors who were very keen that this seminar was going on. So we'll come back and talk about that in a second. So what impact did this have on our business? Obviously, management time. We're all sales organisations. We might call ourselves publishers, but we're not. We're in it for selling. And obviously, we have to make time to prepare to how we're going to reach these markets and how we're also going to make them successful. So you have to think about it and draw up a strategy and everything else. Stock holding. Obviously, this is something that we're going to be selling more cards. We need to make sure that we've got the inventory to be able to do that. A lot of publishers, particularly these days, start on the digital side, or they may find that their point of difference is going through the handmade options as well. Obviously, handmade has its own difficulties when we're wanting to increase volumes, because your economies of scales don't really kick in as they would if you go down the conventional route, printing route. Switching from digital to litho, however, has its own advantages. There are risks involved because obviously you're dealing with much more stock, but obviously if you're backing this up with export orders, then you're in a better position already, and your unit cost will come down. It's a lot better. Warehousing, you don't want a Canadian experience as we did. We fortunately we're with a company called 2WL, who are based up in Mansfield, and they're brilliant at warehousing, because guess what? That's all they do, and they know exactly what they're doing. And so we contract out our warehousing, as I'm sure perhaps a lot of you guys do as well. It just means that massive orders, we share the responsibility, and if Flo doesn't come in one morning because she's not feeling very well into the warehouse, they'll find someone else to make sure that order gets packed. So someone mentioned earlier about with other products, I know it was Steve, I think the extra space you need in your warehouse, obviously these factors have to be considered too. Cash flow. Some people say sometimes that cash flow can be affected with all the export that you're doing. Not really at all. It's providing you've got good trading terms with your printers and your bag suppliers and your envelope suppliers. Really, you're going to be okay. It might sound scary at the beginning, but actually it isn't. Profit. Oh yeah. Yeah, profit again. We'll talk about later on. We'll talk about the cost implications and what sort of export pricing we should be looking at, really, or is normal within our market, acceptable levels within our market. Your profit holds up pretty well because it's all volume driven. This is certainly what we find. Sound good? Okay. Sounds all right so far. Good. Okay. So how best to prepare for export? Okay, and this is we're now going to switch slightly. For all of those who are exhibiting at PG Live, which is a fantastic exhibition, it attracts a lot of overseas visitors and distributors and retailers. And the great thing about any exhibition, but particularly this one, is you never really know who's going to walk on next, and that's great. So we need to be prepared for export. I've also written the notes here based on a conversation I've had with 2 overseas distributors who make their visits here, not just to PG Live, but to other exhibitions as well. And if you like, it reflects their bugbears sometimes when they walk on to publisher stands. So let's see what happens anyway. Let's go through it. So export price list and payment terms. So Big Al is the managing director or CEO of Notes and Queries in Baltimore, in East Coast of America. He's one of the longest serving overseas distributors in our industry. His business has been very successful for over 30 years. He imports British greeting cards. That's what he does. And then he sells them across the USA. He's very good at what he does. He has a lot of knowledge. I was talking to him yesterday, and he was saying, great, Jed, I won't do the accent, because I can't. But he said, the one thing, please get this across. When he walks onto a stand, he says, what's your export price? Some people don't know. A lot of people don't know. A lot of the new people don't know. Sorry, new people, new publishers. Please, let's talk about export price and your payment terms. So, export price, for the maths, let's keep the maths simple. So our trade price is going to be £1. Okay, so they're going to retail in the UK for around £2.50 in a shop. Okay, so our export price is going to be 50 to 60% off the trade price. How much? That's going to be crazy. We're not going to sell a card for 40p, are we? You are, because your volumes are going to be a lot higher, and you'll still make a lot of money because you're not having to pay an agent, or a lot of your costs disappear. So you need to also work out your pricing, write it down. The written word has much more power than just a verbal word, and it's always a starting point. Okay, so at least it's something that you can start with and refer back to. So pricing is important. Your pricing is going to be. Sorry.
Do one more.
Okay. I'll come back to that now. So I just thought there was more bits on the pricing. So pricing is also going to be determined by the size of the territory that we're looking at, whether it's Switzerland or whether it's the USA. Work it out in terms of, let's look at this business over 1 year or 3 years. Let's just not be interested in what we're doing the first order. Okay, we're all long-term players in this, and we're out to build relationships with people. Payment terms. It's great because as a new publisher, everyone pays you on pro forma. It's fantastic. It's great for your cash flow, money in the bank, well before you're actually sending anything out. And that's acceptable. It's still acceptable. It was acceptable 19 years ago. It's still acceptable now. Once you're established, obviously, with the distributor, then you're going to have to start negotiating payment terms with them. Europe, you shouldn't be looking at more than 60 days. Actually, the rest of the world, you shouldn't be looking at more than 60 days, to be honest. Some will try and push you for 90 days. Again, that's down to you and your judgment and your negotiating skills and your choice, whether you believe that this is a really long-term relationship. 90-day payments are fine, providing you're getting regular orders from them, because then you can't have been paying it every 30 days anyway, so that's okay. So payment terms for the first year's trading, 2 years trading, if you can get away with it, should be on a pro forma basis. Then after that, we need to start looking at payment terms. America and Australia are probably your furthest fields, so it's possibly acceptable to go to 90 days with them on the basis that the first 4 weeks is going to be on the water anyway, so no one's really benefiting in terms of getting that there. So territory exclusivity, what can we expect in return? When someone comes onto your stand, they're very excited about, they're very animated about your products, the best product we've seen today. We'd love to work with you in France and Switzerland and Germany, wherever it might be, but it has to be on an exclusive basis. Well, that's fine. And actually, we fell into this trap all the time. And yes, of course, we'll sign you up as our distributor in France. And then you wonder why, you look back after a year and you think, well, hang on, they did an opening order for about £2,000–3,000. We've not really had anything from them since. In the meantime, you've turned down 3 or 4 other distributors from France because you said, oh no, we have a distributor in France, we're fine. Thank you very much. It needs reviewing. Territory exclusivity is we have to test them. We have to talk to them. We have to do due diligence, and we have to really satisfy ourselves that these are the guys that we want to be with. Exclusivity comes at a price. They need to come up with their side of the bargain, really. Sampling requests. I put this down only because you might say, well, it's just a few samples. We're going to put it in a jiffy bag and we'll send it out to them. Alan, our American distributor, when he takes the design, he'll want 144 of every single card for his rep force in the USA. If you do a good order with him, he'll take 40, 50 designs. So all of a sudden, that's quite a lot of cards that are going out just as samples. So with him, we've agreed a cost price, his export cost price, less 50%. So we're just about we are breaking even on that. But he understands, we understand, it's the part of the cost of doing business with them. Ongoing management of our distributors and overseas retail accounts. This is an interesting one because, a bit like I was saying before about, we have a distributor in France, we turn down everyone else. Really, these things these accounts need to be managed and reviewed probably every 6 months. That's what we tend to do. Obviously, with a long-standing relationship like Notes and Queries in the States, it's ongoing anyway. But with these, you have to just keep looking at it and keep looking at it. We have another story that we had. When we first started, we picked up a distributor for Australia. Very, very nice company. We like them very much. They're still very good friends. However, they saw us as a snapshot as a company that we were then when we first started. Remember, I couldn't get on the stand. We as all businesses, you grow, you mature, you're able to develop product. They still saw us, I think, as perhaps slightly niche, and probably still odd, but slightly niche, and certainly they didn't really grow with how we were growing our brand. So then we were approached by another distributor in Australia. This first distributor, we were averaging only about £15,000 a year, so it's quite small fry. We took the decision to switch, and in the first year with the new distributor, we did over £150,000. It just goes to show that, not just keeping them on our toes, we have to keep ourselves on our toes, really. And business is business. So Exhibitor trade fairs that attract overseas distributors and retailers. We've spoken about PG Live, that's the next one on the calendar. It's also, this is the venue. And there's a lot of overseas distributors come here. We need to be prepared for them. If you've decided that you're going to export, as I say, some of your product might not be applicable for export. If it involves a lot of hand making, then you need to be careful with that. However, you can adapt your product. And maybe some passionate designers don't want their product adapted. That's your decision, obviously, that's your decision. At the end of the day, and I speak really from a salesperson's perspective, these distributors are here to place orders. They've got lots of business to do with you if you choose to want to deal with them. Might be it, yeah. The other thing I would say about dealing with distributors is that these are really knowledgeable guys. They know what they're talking about. They know their home market much more than I could ever know about it. And they're a great source of information, and they will help you with your product development. So please use them. We have a situation again with America, only because I was talking to him yesterday. So he's saying, remember, Jed, he says, we could sell twice as many Mother's Day cards if you put mom on it instead of mum. Well, it's probably not going to be happening for our UK market. But because, share a secret with you now, but because a lot of other publishers will say, sorry, we don't do that, we actually probably will. And because he's limited on what he can buy from the UK market, we can negotiate the print run with him quite easily. And all of a sudden, he's buying art file cards with mom on them as well. Square cards has already been mentioned. Yes, there's different postal costs involved with square cards. We offer the majority of ours in 7x5, and it gets over another hurdle. When we first started, we did square cards, we did tall, slim cards, we did all sorts because we were going to reinvent the world of greeting cards. In actual fact, it's kind of okay sometimes to conform. You actually sell a lot more product. Again, we learned that the hard way too. And also Mothering Sunday, again, the American market doesn't exist. They don't understand what Mothering Sunday is all about. So don't think you can get over the mom issue by calling it Mothering Sunday, because they don't buy that either. So there's a couple of tips. But does anyone have any questions in terms of, I hope we've pitched this at the right level.
Can we deal with questions afterwards?
Okay, we'll deal with questions afterwards in that case. So that's really all I wanted to say anyway. So thank you very much.